Hey guys, this is the text that we're going to look at to annotate for your article analysis. Find the file attached below and pause the video, and I'll give you guys a few minutes to read this. Okay, so a couple things right off the bat. I want you guys to notice that I took this from the New York Times. There's information that I kept from the New York Times, like the title, where it came from, who wrote it, and the date. This is meaningful because at the end of it, you'll see the MLA format that I already created for you. But you guys can find how to create this, and I'm sure you guys already know from ezbib.com. Okay, so there's some steps that I want us to think about that you guys generally already know. They're going to be helpful for you to read an article, to take notes, and to respond to it. There's two parts to the article analysis that are meaningful to you. One is the introduction. I'm looking for this to be 3 to 5 sentences that just talk about the article. This is where you get to give kind of the general broad view of what this looks like. And the second part is I'm looking for the rhetorical analysis. As you're looking for that rhetorical analysis, you guys in general are going to need to find out how the author is writing. This is meaningful, of course, because this is the essay question for the SATs. And it's just something that we've been doing really all school year long. So if we look at this article that you've already read, we have some tools in our tool belt that are going to help us. If you guys remember the FIC graphic organizer, the first being the facts. What are the facts of the text? The second being the interpretation. What do those facts make me think about? Or why is the author writing in this way that show us the facts? Or like the arrangement. How is the author arranging this particular article? And then lastly, we have the central idea. We can boil this down to a single thought. And this would be the strategy that the author is using to get this point across. So if we think about that central idea, this is what the author ultimately wants us to think about, to reflect about, to inform us about, to persuade us. The interpretation is how they get that across, and the facts are just the top level surface of what we're looking for. So if we're looking for the facts in this particular piece, well, this one's really interesting. Steve Inskeep does something unique in this, and that is that one of the facts, one of the top level tier of what we're looking for is he uses compare and contrast and reflections on history, historical examples, to get us to that central idea. And that central idea in general is the past repeats. Careful what you repeat. So if you're reading this article, we get to that central idea. Well, now we want to pull out particular pieces that are going to help us to understand that central idea. What is he warning us about repeating? And there's some meaningful things in here that show us that. One of the ways that we can get to that interpretation is to look at, well, what is his tone that leads us to that central idea? What is his attitude towards the subject? And tone was, if you remember, the very first thing that we looked at, that we spent some time at, responding to. And so if you remember tone, there's some steps that we use to identify what tone is. One, we want to look if it's positive, if it's negative, or if it's neutral. Two, we want to be specific. Once we've identified if it's positive, negative, or neutral, then we want to find a specific word that looks at that. Well, he kind of has an attitude or a tone towards some reflection, but also some warning. The third thing we want to do when we look at tone is we want to ask, well, does the tone shift at all? And if it does shift, what does it shift to? Does it shift from positive to negative, from neutral to negative, from neutral to positive, whatever that is? We want to be aware of what that shift is. For me, I find that shift right here. This is where I see a tone shift. Everything before this paragraph is a look at the past to get us to think about the 2020 election. Now, this was published in January, and so it's been quite a few months of us to think about the 2020 election, so it has aged a bit. But the central idea, I think, is meaningful. And then we get to the last part of this, right? So we have that tone shift from the beginning. We can identify what that tone is, positive, negative, neutral, be specific. We can see that tone shift in the last 4 paragraphs. And then we see kind of that last reflection, right? That it seems to be positive, or at least seems to be like reflective that something meaningful is going to happen, and we need to be aware of it. So once we identify that tone shift, well, that leads us towards interpretation, right? He uses history. He uses tone. That leads to that central idea. Everything from there is to look at, okay, well, why is he writing in this way? Why does he use history to help him reach that central idea? Why does he use his tone? And why does the tone shift allow him to be effective with that central idea? You can also look at rhetoric. This is one thing that we have talked about a lot. If you remember, rhetoric, we have ethos, pathos, and logos. All of these are appeals that help make his argument, Stephen Keep's argument, the best that it possibly can be. When you're reading this article, as an example, you'll find that he uses these historical moments to show us how it's similar to the 2020 election, but also what we can learn from it. So once you find those ideas, once you find the facts, what do those facts make you think about? How is he writing? What's his organization? That leads you to interpretation. How does this help us understand his central idea and then eventually get to that central idea? From there, you can plan accordingly how you're going to write. When you have your introduction paragraph, remember you want to have 3 to 5 sentences. And this should just be the summary of the article, getting to that main idea. For your body paragraphs, the easiest way to practice this is to go in chronological order. How does he go from the beginning of the essay to the end of the essay to reach that central idea, all the way to that central idea? And then you have your conclusion. I'm not so much worried about the conclusion as I am about these body paragraphs, how you are showing how the author is writing. I hope that's helpful for you guys. Keep reading, keep writing. If you haven't done the article analysis, feel free to use this one. It's a really good, it's really meaningful to use this one as practice. I'll post another video of looking at the introduction paragraph in a little bit, as well as like a body paragraph and using some specific sentence frames to help you to write this rhetorical analysis or article analysis. All right, guys, have a Great evening.